Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and I'm here to take a look at everything we know currently about Elite Dangerous Horizons. As most of you no doubt know, Horizons is an upcoming expansion for the game due to be released in December that will allow people to land on planets. There has been a little bit of controversy surrounding all this and I'll get to that in a little while. Horizons is being marketed as a season of content. A season essentially lasts for a year. And we've already had Season 1, which included release, then Patch 1.1, which was Community Goals, Patch 1.2, which was Wings, and Patch 1.3, which is Power Play. Season 1 will also include Patch 1.4, which is the CQC update, along with Patch 1.5, which is currently and tentatively called Ships. Patch 1.5 will bring the total amount of ships in the game up to 30, which will mean we'll have all the ships in the game that have currently been promised. After that, we will be moving into Season 2, which will begin with the ability to land on planets. There will be a number of other patches included in Season 2 which will update the Horizons game, but Season 2 will also update the base game. If you don't buy Horizons, you will still get updates to the base game. Now, you won't be able to land on planets, and of course you won't get those sort of updates, but there is going to be updates to the mission system and various other updates. There will be the introduction of new ships as well, and you should get all those updates if you only own Elite Dangerous and you don't own Horizons. So if you don't buy Horizons, you're not cut off from all future added content, you'll just be cut off from all Horizons based content. So what does Horizons include? Well, there's a little bit of controversy surrounding this, and I personally feel that partially that's down to Frontier doing a little bit of a poor job of communicating exactly what Horizons does contain. Talking of controversy, there is actually two aspects to that. One is the pricing issue, which I'm not going to get into at the moment, and the other is a content issue, which I'm going to talk about right now. They've said that Horizons will contain the ability to land on airless planets, rocky planets or rocky moons, and basically that seems to be all that a lot of people have heard. But there is a heck of a lot of more to the game than that, and I'm going to go ahead and detail everything we know about it at the moment. So let's start with planets. Yes, at first it's going to be airless planets. The entire of the Horizons season will focus on airless planets and airless moons. There will be no atmospheric planets whatsoever within this current season. That will come in a later season. It may be Season 3, it may be Season 4 or whatever, we don't actually know yet. But this video is all about Horizons, so we'll focus on that for the moment. So, airless planets. What does that include? Well, to get a bit of an idea of that, let's have a look at this little chart here. Just have a look at the amount of planets here that are designated airless. The ones circled in orange are the ones that we will be able to land on during Horizons. As you can see, there's a significant variation. Now, we do know that to start with, we'll have the ability to land on rocky planets and rocky moons. That will later be expanded within the Horizon season, probably within the first quarter, maybe the second quarter, but certainly over the course of the year. We will then get the ability to land on ice planets and moons, along with rock and ice combination planets, and then metallic planets. Now, for any of you that have travelled around for any amount of time, even a short amount of time, you will see that there are a vast amount of variations in metallic planets. You go from the orange Mars type looking planets to the yellow cheeseball type planets. You have the pizza looking planets, and you also have the purple and yellow planets. There's the deep red planets. There is a whole multitude of different type of planets, and when you look at these from the orbit, you can see they also have different surfaces. Some of them have a lot of mountain ranges on them. Some apparently seem to have a lot of canyons on them. Others have massive amounts of impact craters spread right across the surface of the planets, and then you find the planets that are dashed with volcanoes. So as you can see, there's a huge amount of variation in planet types, and of course each of these can also combine with other types. So you can have planets with volcanoes and huge impact craters on. You can have planets with huge canyons in them, as well as massive mountain ranges, as well as any other combination you can pretty much think of. All of these will also have a great variety in surface coloration as well. So talking of volcanoes, that is something that is also going to follow in the Horizons update. We're not just going to be limited to viewing volcanoes as just mountains that are sitting there. We are going to have active volcanoes as well as active ice volcanoes. This leads into the next thing. Any of you that have had a look at the planets from any variation of systems will no doubt have seen the lava planets. And these, more often than not, are designated as metallic worlds or high metal content worlds, which means that these should also be featured within the Horizons update. Now, there's been a lot of comments around the internet about the Horizons update and the fact that it's just going to allow us to land on airless rocky moons. As you can see, this at this point is simply a meme. It's just one of those viral comments, one of those viral ideas that spread around the internet like wildfire. Unfortunately, this one is spread on misinformation. The game is going to contain a lot more than just airless rocky moons. Now, it's quite right that we're not going to get the ability to land on atmospheric planets. Frontier did make it very clear from the start that we would get to land on planets within stages, although they didn't really say that we would have to pay for atmospheric planets as a separate expansions, although I personally expected that to be the case. Obviously a lot of people didn't, but I can really understand where they're coming from, and I can understand the disappointment in that. But look at it this way. At the moment, with all the new planet types, we're going to get a lot of unique new gameplay that's going to be associated with these types of planets. And if atmospheric planets and planets with life and water worlds all come at a later date, they are all going to have unique types of gameplay associated with them. So I guess we could all have all the planets we want right now, including atmospheric planets, but we would have the same gameplay spread along each planet. This way we get to have essentially a very different game experience depending on what type of planet we go down to. Just imagine we can go down to water worlds and have submersible ships and have entire new game worlds under the ocean, along with new gameplay types. The same would hold true to atmospheric planets as well as populated planets with cities, as well as planets that support life. Each of them should have their own unique types of gameplay, maybe with their own unique types of vehicles to get around. Obviously, an SRV, a surface-wheeled vehicle, is going to be no good for a water world, is it? You're going to need submarines or boats and things like that. And no doubt that is going to be brought in when we get the ability to land on water worlds. Now, planets, like the rest of the galaxy, are generated by the Stellar Forge system. This is the algorithm within the game that is responsible for creating the galaxy. It's a very, very complex system and generates very, very complex planets. Each planet will have its own geology, its own history, its own makeup. This includes pretty much everything from the initial formation of the planet right up to the current time period. So this means planets are basically as real as they can get. Now, some of the planets will start to look a little bit different. As Horizon comes in, it's going to have to generate the surface of planets, and this is going to make certain planets within the star systems around the galaxy actually look a little bit different. And the planets themselves, the worlds themselves, are going to be regenerated so that from a distance, when we're travelling around in space, they will look a bit different to what they currently look. And so that right there is some content that people without Horizons will actually get. The planets will actually start to look different. Hopefully that all means they will start to look better and be improved and may have more detail and higher resolution, but who knows, we'll have to wait and see what all that is about. Planets themselves are all on a 1-to-1 scale. That means we'll get some small moons, as small as our moon and maybe much smaller, and planets the size of Earth, and planets much bigger, and they're all going to take real time to travel around in. The SRV, the Scarab vehicle that we actually get on the surface, has the ability to travel a maximum speed of 100 miles per hour, and if we land on a planet the size of Earth, it's been estimated that it will take up to 10 real days to do a full travel around the full circumference of that planet. So these planets are truly huge, and none of it is locked off. Although some planets do have permits, we can't land on every single planet or moon. For example, we can't land on Earth's moon without a permit, but when we are down on a planet, none of it will be sectioned off. It will be fully open world and we will be able to go wherever we want. The ability to land on planets isn't just limited to those within human-occupied space. For those of you that like to explore and travel out towards the outer edges of the galaxy or the galaxy core, or indeed anywhere else, Any planets out here that are landable within the Horizons expansion will of course be landable. We're about to go down onto these planets. Now what we find there on these planets outside of human space is another matter. They may be a little bit empty, like non-human occupied space currently is, or they may be full of activities. I guess again, that's one more thing we just got to wait and see. But the interesting thing is that we will be able to land on these planets, and I for one really look forward to being able to land on planets that are inside nebulas. And regardless of the fact whether these planets have got atmospheres or not, you can't tell me they're not going to look interesting. When I can go stand on a mountain on an iced planet that has the strange bluey whitish glow hue that ice asteroids currently have, and I can look up at the sky and see the rings that are orbiting the planet I'm standing on, and I can see the backdrop of a beautiful blue or red or even a blue and red nebula. That is going to be a stunning vista, and it's going to be a very beautiful game. You may be wondering, what can we do on these planets? It's all well and good having these massive planets if there's nothing for us to do down there. But there is a bunch of things for us to do, and I'm going to get to that very shortly. But first I want to talk about how we get down to the planets. So as we approach a planet currently, we drop out of Super Cruise if we get too close to the planet. What's going to happen in Horizons is that once we get close to a planet, as we currently do, we'll switch into a new travel mode called Orbital Cruise. If you don't have Horizons, you'll drop out in the same way you currently do. So if you're winged up with someone who does have Horizons and you don't, you'll drop out and they will be able to continue onwards into Orbital Cruise, meaning they'll be able to get a lot closer to the planet. In Orbital Cruise, you'll be able to travel around the planet and do scans of the surface and find points of interest. Points of interest will include bases, outposts, fortresses, mineral deposits, shipwrecks, and a number of other things. There's also going to be things to discover beneath the surface of the planet, and I do remember a video of David Braben talking about cave systems, although I can't find a reference to that anymore, so either that's in the game or I'm going completely mad and I just imagined it. But there's definitely quotes from Frontier on the fact that points of interest will exist beneath the planetary surface. When you've found a point of interest, you'll actually be able to leave Orbital Cruise and head on down to that area you've selected. Now, you're not limited to landing at areas you've selected. You can actually land on any point on the planet that takes your desire, just in the same way that you can enter a ring system at any point in the current game. You'll be able to land on anywhere on the planet as long as that area of ground will support your ship, so no landing on the vertical side of mountains or things like that. And obviously the larger your ship you've got, the harder it's going to be for you to find a suitable landing place. So as with the rest of the game, there's going to be benefits to having smaller ships, and there's going to be benefits to having larger ships. Once you're down near the surface of the planet, you'll have the choice of flying around the planet over the surface, or landing and deploying your ground vehicle and travelling around the planet on the ground. The transition into your vehicle will be the same as it currently is when we move from ship to ship, which is basically just a fade to black. There's going to be no ability to get up out your seat and walk into your vehicle at the moment. Hopefully that will come in a later expansion. When we leave our ship and start travelling around in our ground vehicle, the ship will remain where it is. Now, when we travel a certain distance from the ship, we don't know yet how far that is, the ship will go into an automated mode. It will take off and fly away. It will then go into low orbit. This opens up the potential perhaps for the ship to be discovered. However, that shouldn't happen because the ship will go into autopilot. It will also power down all of its non-essential modules. Now, as you're not on board, it will be able to power down pretty much everything, including life support, shields, and even engines. Once it's in orbit, it won't even need the engines. So this means it will be able to run very, very cold, and it will be able to run very, very slowly, making it pretty much a non-existent target for anyone to discover. Now, when you want to turn to your ship, you simply summon it. From what I can understand, this isn't simply a case of summoning your mount like you do in games like World of Warcraft and the mount just appears next to you. What happens is that the ship flies down from orbit and flies to your location. Now, people have asked how you get back into your ship. Apparently, there's a way for you to get your vehicle back into your ship without the ship needing to actually land. I'm not going to speculate on exactly how that will be achieved, but it sounds pretty interesting nonetheless, doesn't it? Hopefully there will also be a way for your ship to land itself and then you get back inside the ship from the ground. But you know what, now I actually think about it and think about the docking computer that exists that gets you into the stations and the amount of times that has actually crashed people, it makes me wonder if Frontier have perhaps thought a docking computer landing the ship on a planetary surface when all those planetary surfaces are different is probably not a good idea. So to avoid any mishaps, the ship will probably float up above the surface of the planet and we'll have to boost into the ship from the surface. And this will perhaps keep our ship safer than it otherwise would. Because if the ship trashes itself on the planet and we're stuck in a vehicle, that's not going to be fun for anyone, is it? Talking of that, if we die whilst in our vehicle, we will spawn back inside our ship. If our ship is destroyed while on the surface of a planet or while in orbit around a planet, we will spawn back inside the last station we docked at, as is currently the case. The vehicles themselves sound really interesting, and there's actually going to be a number of them, although on the initial release we're only going to get the one, which is the Scarab, and that's the smallest of the SRVs. This will fit inside every single ship, including the Sidewinder, and it occupies 4 cargo units of space. Which means in a Sidewinder you'll be able to fit the SRV but nothing else. Now there is one ship that the SRV won't be able to fit in, but that ship isn't currently in the game, so we don't know what that ship's going to be. My suspicions are that it's going to be the Condor, which features in CQC, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what that's all about. There are going to be other SRVs, some of them will be much larger. Some of them will have unique abilities, and you'll have vehicles, much like ships, that are best suited to certain activities. So we might have more tank-like vehicles that are better for combat. We'll have speedy vehicles that are perhaps better for reconnaissance, other vehicles which are suited to mining or exploration, and so on. The SRVs fold up when they go inside your ship so they can fit inside a more compacted cargo area, but when they leave their ship they unfold and have their own cargo space. In the Scarab you'll be able to carry between 4 to 6 units of cargo, which is going to be pretty good, but I don't yet know how that works out when you put your SRV back inside the Sidewinder. If the Scarab itself only takes up 4 cargo units of space, what happens to the cargo that you actually carry? And I guess that could remain inside the Scarab, or perhaps you'll just have to abandon it and you may need to take around a larger ship. I guess that's another thing we'll have to wait and see. On the planets themselves there's going to be other things we can do. There's going to be resource nodes and mineral deposits, so things we can go out and mine, and hopefully these will be types of ore that are not currently in the game. There's also going to be shipwrecks that we can go out and explore and loot, and these will contain salvage and other items, again, that are not currently available in the game, and things that perhaps we can make use of or otherwise sell. As mentioned earlier, there's going to be resources below the planetary surface as well, so all of these are going to be dotted around the planet and we're going to have to travel around to try and discover them. Now, to keep things interesting as we're travelling, there's a new enemy type. These enemies are called skimmers, and these are basically ground vehicles, although their classes are not quite ground vehicles, so I imagine they're a little bit more like hovercraft or something like that. They can float a little bit above the planetary surface, but they cannot fly, so essentially they're still based on the ground. These are AI based ships, and they are enemies. They will attack you and try and prevent you from being on the planet. They will try and stop you from collecting things, and you'll get involved in combat with them. The good thing is that your Scarab features a weapon. It has a weapon mounted to the front of it, so you will be able to attack these skimmers. When you destroy a skimmer, it will leave behind a wreck that you can salvage, and you'll also be able to take any cargo that it leaves behind. And this, like with in space, you'll be able to sell the stuff on the black market. Hopefully it will contain unique content that's not available in space. The skimmers themselves are AI controlled, as I mentioned, and they're controlled from bases on the planet, NPC bases. And the range of the skimmers is fairly limited. They can only extend out a reasonable way from the base that they originate from. But dotted around the planet will be relay towers, and these will extend the range of the skimmers. Now, you should be able to attack and destroy these relays, meaning you'll be able to effectively isolate certain areas of the skimmers. You'll be able to reduce down the radius of area that they're able to cover. It's also possible to attack the bases themselves, and you're about to attack these bases either from the ground or from the air, or if you're in a wing you're about to do it in a combination. So this really does open an entirely new format of combat for the game, and that is attacking bases. It also opens up the ability for player defended bases at some point, and I fully expect that to be featured in the game before too long. Now that hasn't been confirmed either way by Frontier, but it really does make sense, doesn't it? Other buildings on the planets will include outposts. Now these would exist in various sizes. You'll have smaller ones which you just can enter with your SRV, and these will give out missions, probably just planetary based missions. You'll have larger outposts that you can land on with your ship. They'll have landing pads on. It's going to be very interesting to see how landing an Anaconda and a T9 is going to handle with these. The largest of these outposts is going to have the full station services lists that we currently have, and of course they will also give out missions. Now missions are going to be connected from space stations down to ground bases, so you'll have missions that are spread from space down to the ground, as well as just missions that are based on the ground. There's going to be a complete overhaul of the mission system, meaning that we're going to have multi-tiered missions as well as chained missions, and this is going to be a significant improvement for the game, because as it currently stands I'm not a big fan of the mission structure, but the moment we can get chained missions, these are going to be awesome, especially if we can have missions that originate on the ground and go up into space and perhaps have us go find something on another planet entirely. Pretty much the sky's the limit when you consider those sort of things. Whether Frontier go as far as introducing the chained missions to that extent, we'll have to wait and see, but I think they're keen to do it. It's just a matter of time with them, as with everything else. Now all structures on planets, and this includes all the small bases, it includes outposts and it includes fortresses, all of these are permanent structures. They're not instanced areas, so they won't despawn when you leave the area. They will remain there permanently, and this means you're about to return to them, and it also means that other people will be able to come into the area either when you're there or at a later date. So I touched on combat just briefly a little while ago in regards to attacking enemy bases. Now combat itself is going to have to take a dramatic change when you're on the surface of planets, and largely that's because of the flight model. The flight model when flying around planets is very, very different to what we have in space. When we get down onto the planets, the gravity is going to be constantly tugging at the ship, and the larger your ship, the heavier it's going to be, and this means of course that the more likelihood of your ship is going to hit the ground. Now the details of how the new flight system actually works are fairly vague, but what we've been able to piece together so far is that you're going to have to use your manoeuvring thrusters a lot more. To keep above the ground, you're going to need to use your lateral and vertical thrusters a lot. Your thrusters are constantly going to have to be pushing your ship upwards away from the ground, and when you move either left or right or forward or back, your ship will tip slightly and it will lose balance and start to slide toward the ground, and you'll then have to rebalance it again to keep it aloft. The larger your ship is, the harder this is going to be. The speed your ship move at will of course be a lot different to what we can travel at in space. We won't be doing any travelling at the speed of light down here on the surface of planets, and although we don't know currently what the upper speeds are for ships, I would imagine they'll be fairly similar to what we currently have in modern day aircraft. But who knows, maybe they'll be significantly faster as well. With space, Frontier have always been keener to keep the sense of scale fully intact, and that has meant that we weren't able to travel instantly anywhere or too fast anywhere. So I suspect, and it makes sense, that the same rules will apply to how we travel on the surface of planets. If we can travel too fast, it will make the planet seem small, and I think that's the last thing Frontier will actually want. So all of this is going to affect the combat system. We will be able to dogfight on the surface of planets, over the surface of planets should I say, and that will be heavily influenced by how dramatically the new flight model actually affects the ships. There will also of course be ground combat. Players will be able to attack each other in their SRV. But more than that, players in ships will be able to attack other players that are in SRVs. Now this may sound like it could be overpowered, that the ships will instantly be able to annihilate the SRVs, but the thing is, the SRVs have no heat signature, and they are very, very fast, and they're also very, very small. So it's going to be very difficult for ships to attack SRVs on the ground. But nonetheless, it will be possible. And of course the bases will feature anti-aircraft guns, so they will be able to attack ground to air, making the ships vulnerable targets as they fly over and try and destroy the bases. And this is perhaps where the Scarabs and the other SRVs will come in, as they can come in from the ground and just try and destroy the cannons or the power sources, thus disabling the base, making it more of an easy target for the ships. So talking of flight mechanics and control systems, the SRVs will have their own mechanics of control. And this will essentially revolve around thrusters. The initial vehicle, the Scarab, is a 6-wheeled vehicle, so of course it moves around the surface of the planet on its wheels. But you're going to have planets that have very, very low gravity. And every time you hit a rock or a bump, the vehicle has the potential to float up away from the planet, and you will need the thrusters that are attached to the wheels to avoid this. You'll be able to orientate the thrusters so that they point downward, giving your vehicle much better traction to the surface. And of course the same will be, or the opposite will be true for larger planets, or planets with larger gravity. You'll be able to use the thrusters here to make your vehicle more manoeuvrable, to push it upwards and essentially away from the ground. And the thrusters, of course, will also come in handy when you want to climb up the edges of mountains, the edges of sharp rises, and get in and out of craters and things like that, in and out of canyons, in and out of craters. A lot of people I've seen have compared the SRV in Elite Horizons to the Mako in the first Mass Effect game, and I think this is actually a good thing. The Mako, although a lot of people derided it, was actually quite a good vehicle, but the control system wasn't all that well implemented. The thrusters were poorly designed, and the thing bounced all over the place like a bit of a crazy thing. Now look at what attention to detail Frontier have put into the control system for the ships in Elite. I'm sure they've gone to the same methods, the same lengths to put a decent control system into the vehicles. It would seem then that handling the vehicles is going to be a very unique experience, and essentially we're going to have to learn a lot of things from Elite all over again. We've of course got the space flight, which we've all got used to by now, where they're going to have orbital cruise. This may or may not be the same as Super Cruise. We don't know yet if the mechanics there are a little bit different. Hopefully they are. And then we've then got surface flight, where you're going to have to contend with gravity. On top of that, we're going to have to learn how to control the vehicles, the ground vehicles. Now, the ground vehicles will also handle differently depending on the planet type. Whether you're on a rocky planet or an icy planet will dramatically affect how the vehicle handles. So again, I'd just like to touch on the aspect of atmospheric planets and water worlds and things like that. Just look at how much has gone into rocky worlds and the ice worlds and things we've currently got. They've all got their own flight mechanics, they've all got their own vehicles. When we get to the other planets, of course, ships are going to handle differently again, and it will need yet another control method, and they will all need their own type of vehicles as well. So that covers pretty much most of what we know about the initial release of Horizons, but there's going to be a number of patches over the course of 2016 that will add much more content. The first of these is going to add, which will come in the first quarter of 2016, is going to add a looting system as well as a crafting system. We don't know anything more about these two systems at the moment, but they do represent significant changes to the entire Elite universe and how the game will play out. As I touched on earlier, Frontier have also confirmed that Horizons will feature a whole bunch of new ships, and this is in addition to the 30 that we already are going to have by the time patch 1.5 comes out. Now hopefully the looting system, the crafting system and the new ships should all be available to people with the base Elite Dangerous game. I'd imagine those are aspects that we will get included even if we don't have the Horizons expansion. So based on what we know at the moment, we can safely assume that Elite Dangerous Horizons is basically an entire game in and of itself, and whether that or not justifies the asking price is up to the individual. But I can certainly understand where Frontier are coming from when they're asking money for this amount of development. It's not merely airless rocky moons, as some people seem to be suggesting, when we get down to we'll have nothing to do on them. It is going to be many new planets with entire new combat systems of flight mechanics, vehicles, ships, and mission systems, along with a whole new lot of supporting core game features. So before I wrap up, let's just take a quick look at just who is entitled to what when it comes to the Elite Dangerous Horizons expansion. There are a number of different ways of getting the expansion, and some member of the community was kind enough to develop a very nice flowchart that explains it all, and I'll link that in the video description. But the basics are essentially that depending on when you bought the game and where you bought it, it will determine how you get access to Horizons and what you have to pay for it. So for those of you that backed the game on Kickstarter and paid the fee, the pledge level that entitled you to all expansions, you will of course be getting Elite Dangerous Horizons without any further payment. Those of you that backed for Alpha and Premium Beta, and that includes whether you did it on the Kickstarter or whether you did it a little bit later on the backer porthole, you will also be getting Elite Dangerous Horizons for free. That's included in your initial purchase. You'll also be getting all future expansions for free. Alpha and Premium Beta also include beta access to Elite Dangerous Horizons, and of course you'll also get beta access to all future expansions. Now there was another level of beta. This was standard beta, and if you paid around about £50 for that, that does not include Elite Dangerous Horizons or any of the other future expansions. You will actually have to buy the Elite Dangerous Horizons expansion. If during the pre-release phase you purchased the Lifetime Expansion Pass, which at the time was just £35, you will of course have access to Elite Dangerous Horizons. That's included in your expansion payment. This is not to be mistaken with the current Lifetime Expansion Pass, which is a different thing. That is now £130, but it does include beta access to all expansions. If you buy that, you will of course get access to Elite Dangerous Horizons and all future expansions. Just to reiterate, the original Lifetime Expansion Pass was nearly £100 cheaper, but that of course doesn't include beta access. £130 of course is a huge sum of money for a season pass, but do keep in mind that Frontier have a 10-year plan for Elite Dangerous, so that's potentially 10 years worth of expansions. At £40 a time, the Lifetime Pass would represent a saving. But to be perfectly honest, I can totally understand people balking at the idea of paying out that amount of money in one go. If you purchased the Mercenary edition of Elite Dangerous, which was the pre-order copy, that does not include Elite Dangerous Horizons, and you will have to buy that as a separate copy. If you want beta access to Elite Dangerous Horizons, that can be purchased as a total purchase with Elite Dangerous Horizons. It's £50, and that of course includes the full game as well as beta access. But it won't include beta access to future expansions, but it should include beta access to all other patches within the Horizons season. So that essentially covers the basics of how and where you will get access to Elite Dangerous Horizons. If you're not sure of what's what, there is a nice flowchart in the video description. Someone kindly made that, and it's on many places around the internet, but click the link and that should tell you what's what. If you're not sure what type of account you've got, log into your Frontier account and have a look at your purchase history. It will tell you there what type of copy of the game you've actually got. Now there's one final thing I want to talk about, and that is access to free ships. Anyone who purchases Elite Dangerous Horizons, regardless of how you purchased it, whether that was through Alpha or Premium Beta access or a Lifetime Pass access, or whether you purchased the game now on pre-order, if you already own Elite Dangerous as well, you will get access to the Cobra Mark IV. Now, free access doesn't mean you'll automatically get given the ship for free. It means the ship will be unlocked for you within the game to purchase with in-game money. Those without Elite Dangerous Horizons will not be able to purchase the Cobra Mark IV at all. Also, there is one other layer of free ships, and that is for people who had early access to the game. In patch 1.5, which as we said is tentatively called ships and is going to bring the total amount of ships in the game up to 30 ships, those with early access will get access to, or free access to, one of 5 of the last ship. That's ships 26 through to 30. If you had early access to the game, you'll be able to get access to one of these for free. Now, I don't know yet whether that's going to work in the same way as the Cobra Mark IV, and that the ability to purchase these ships will be actually unlocked to you, or whether you'll actually be given one of these for free. That's something that Frontier hasn't confirmed yet, so we're going to have to wait and see. So, as of right now, that covers pretty much everything we know about Elite Dangerous Horizons, and as you can see, it dramatically changes the game on a very fundamental level. It's something I'm very excited about. Planetary landings is something I wanted right from the start. It was one of the main reasons I got into pledging for Elite in the first place. It was something I really did enjoy with Elite 2, so very much looking forward to what that is going to bring to the game. If there's anything I didn't cover, do let me know in the comments and we can discuss it there, and perhaps I'll cover it in a future video. For now, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.